The stars above Eidolon Prime burned like cold fire, distant and silent. Space had never looked so cruel. From orbit, hundreds of alien ships floated like a swarm of blades. The Kravian Grand Armada, a force feared across half the galaxy. Their victory was almost complete. Only one human colony still stood between them and total domination. Captain Riel Thenner, commander of the Kravian flagship Obsidian Claw, stood on his command bridge with his hands clasped behind his back. The alien's dark eyes scanned the holographic map before him, filled with red dots marking Terran defensive points. Most of them were already fading one by one. As his fleet wiped them from existence, the Terran defenses are collapsing. "Captain," reported his first officer, a tall Kravian with silver markings on his scales, "their planetary shields are weak. One more strike and they will fall." Riel gave a slow nod. "Good. Prepare to finish this. The humans have delayed the inevitable long enough." His tone was calm, but deep down a small part of him felt uneasy. The humans had been supposed to surrender weeks ago. They had lost their central command. Their colonies were burned, their fleet scattered to the winds. Yet here they were, still fighting, still resisting, as if defeat meant nothing to them. He had studied humans before the war. They were younger than the Kravians, less advanced, their technology crude by galactic standards. But there was something strange about them, something he could not easily explain. They adapted too quickly. They refused to understand fear the way other species did. He pushed the thought away. "Signal the ground forces. Begin the invasion." On the surface of Eidolon Prime, the world was burning. Mountains of dust rose where once there had been cities. Terran defensive bunkers shook with every orbital bombardment. Inside one of them, Commander Sarah Holt stood at the central console, her face lit by the flicker of warning lights. The bunker's thick walls trembled as another explosion struck nearby. "Shields at 12%, Commander," shouted her communications officer. "The upper districts are gone. We've lost contact with the southern line." Sarah clenched her jaw. "Evacuate any survivors to Bunker 3. Keep the shield generators running as long as you can." "Yes, ma'am." Her small crew rushed between consoles, their faces pale but determined. Most were young, miners, engineers, civilians turned soldiers. They had been fighting nonstop for days with almost no sleep, no reinforcements, and no hope of rescue. The nearest Terran fleet had been destroyed months ago. No help was coming. Sarah walked to the display showing the orbital battle. Blue dots marked the last Terran defense satellites, slowly being erased by the Kravian fleet. She felt a heavy weight in her chest but refused to show it. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Quan, her second in command, "the Kravian commander has broadcast a message. They're demanding surrender." Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. "Play it." The voice that came through the speakers was calm, almost gentle, but carried the arrogance of someone who believed victory was already his. "To the commander of the Terran forces on Eidolon Prime, this is Captain Riel Thenner of the Kravian Empire. You have fought well, but resistance is meaningless. Your defenses are broken. Your colonies have fallen. Surrender now and your people will be treated with mercy." The message ended in static. Everyone in the room turned toward Sarah. They waited for her order, to fight or to surrender. She stood silent for a moment, then spoke clearly. "Transmit my reply." Her voice echoed through the underground chamber as she faced the microphone. "This is Commander Sarah Holt of the United Terran Colonies. We appreciate your concern, Captain Thenner, but we don't surrender. Ever." The bunker filled with quiet laughter, tired but proud. Even the younger soldiers smiled through the fear. The transmission ended, and the crew went back to work with renewed energy. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Humans had always been underestimated. The Kravians thought they were fighting soldiers. They didn't understand they were fighting survivors. Outside, the war raged on. Kravian landing ships entered the atmosphere, burning through the sky like falling stars. On the ground, Terran soldiers and volunteers fought street by street, turning rubble into cover and tunnels into traps. Every building, every road became part of their defense. The humans didn't have numbers or advanced weapons, but they had courage and desperation. In the command center, Sarah watched the map fill with enemy markers. Her people were being pushed back on every front. Still they held. "Ma'am," said Quan quietly, "the beacon, is it still transmitting?" Sarah turned toward the far corner of the room. There, a single metal tower pulsed with a dim blue light, the emergency beacon, an ancient piece of Terran technology designed during the earliest days of human space travel. It sent a deep space distress signal on an old military frequency. No one had used that frequency in decades. It's still active, Sarah said, but we have no idea if anyone's even listening. Quan hesitated. If no one answers, what then? Then we make them remember us, she said softly. Even if it's the last thing we do. Far above, on the obsidian claw, Captain Ryle watched the battle unfold with growing irritation. The humans should have broken by now. Yet reports kept coming in. Kravian squads trapped, supply routes ambushed, small human units fighting to the last man. He turned to his aide. These losses are unnecessary. Why do they keep resisting? Their planet is finished. The aide bowed slightly. Perhaps they fear punishment if they surrender. Ryle shook his head. No, this isn't fear. This is something else. For a moment, he remembered a report he had once read years ago from the early Kravian scouts who first encountered humanity. The words echoed in his mind. Humans do not yield. They endure. He dismissed the thought and straightened. Continue bombardment. End this quickly. As the obsidian claw prepared another orbital strike, a faint blip appeared on the long-range scanner. One of the technicians frowned and zoomed in. The signal was weak, distorted, and ancient. Captain, the technician said, we're detecting a strange transmission from deep space. It's human. Ryle turned sharply. A distress call? It appears to be an old Terran military frequency, but it's not coming from any known fleet. Ryle studied the faint trace on the display. It was like a ghost, distant, fading in and out of sensor range. Log it, he said. Probably some automated signal from a dead ship. Yes, Captain. Still. Ryle couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching from the dark. On Eidolon Prime, night fell under a sky lit by explosions. Sarah stood outside the bunker for a moment, staring upward. The air smelled of smoke and burned metal. Somewhere far above, the Kravian ships looked like drifting stars, silent and merciless. A young soldier walked up beside her. Commander, he said quietly, do you really think help will come? Sarah looked at him. Barely 20, his uniform torn, his face streaked with dirt. She smiled faintly. I don't know, she admitted, but we sent the call. That's what matters. He nodded slowly, drawing strength from her calm. My mother used to tell me that humans always find a way. Sarah's gaze hardened on the sky. She was right. Behind them, the beacon continued to pulse, faint, steady, and patient. Somewhere in the cold emptiness of space, its signal spread across the stars, repeating one message again and again. This is Commander Sarah Holt of the United Terran Colonies. Eidolon Prime is under siege. Any Terran ship, any ally, please respond. We hold the line. The words traveled for light years through radiation storms and the silence of ancient battlefields. Most of space ignored them. But far beyond the edge of known charts, deep in a forgotten sector, something heard. Buried in the darkness of a nebula, a massive shape stirred. Old engines flickered to life for the first time in centuries. A single blue light blinked on the hull, illuminating faded letters. TDS Retribution. Its AI core awakened, voice echoing through empty halls. Distress signal received. Terran outpost in danger. Course plotted. In the distance, stars shifted as the great ship began to move. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable, Eidolon Prime had sent a call for help, and the galaxy was about to remember what it meant when humanity answered. The skies of Eidolon Prime burned red as dawn rose behind the smoke. The Kravian fleet hung above the planet like a storm that refused to leave. From orbit, the enemy ships glowed with cold lights, forming perfect cruel patterns as they prepared for another wave of bombardment. Inside the Terran command bunker, Commander Sarah Holt stood surrounded by tired faces and flickering screens. The air was heavy with dust and the constant hum of power generators. Every few minutes, the floor trembled as another blast struck the outer shields. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Quan, rubbed his eyes and reported, "Outer defense lines are gone, Commander. We only have 3 artillery units still operational. Ammo levels are critical." Sarah didn't look up. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic display showing the battle. The blue icons representing her remaining troops were shrinking. "Keep them moving," she said firmly. "Rotate fire positions every 10 minutes. Make the Kravians think we have more guns than we do." Quan hesitated. That might only delay them for a few hours. Then that's a few hours they don't own, she replied, her tone steady. Behind her, a medic hurried through the bunker, helping a wounded soldier whose arm was wrapped in bandages. The soldier saluted weakly when he saw her. Sarah gave him a small nod of respect. Even now, morale remained, thin but unbroken. Far above the planet, the Kravian Grand Armada prepared for its final attack. Captain Riel Thenner stood before the wide viewport of the Obsidian Claw. Below him, Eidolon Prime glimmered in the dark like a dying ember. The planet's surface was scarred and burning, yet the humans refused to surrender. It was beginning to bother him. His second officer approached. Captain, all ground divisions report heavy resistance. Human guerrilla forces continue to strike our supply routes. Their tactics are unpredictable, Riel frowned. Unpredictable? Yes, Captain. They fight in small units. They move underground, use old tunnels and mining shafts. Every time we think they're gone, they appear somewhere else. The captain turned back to the viewport. His reflection stared back at him. Sharp eyes, ridged skin, a face trained for war. But even a soldier could feel curiosity. He had fought many species before. Disciplined, logical, emotionless armies that surrendered once their odds dropped below success. But these humans, they kept fighting when the fight was already lost. It was not bravery, he thought. It was something deeper. Something that made them dangerous. Tell the fleet to prepare another orbital strike, Riel said finally. Let us see how long their courage lasts under fire. The ground shook as the next bombardment began. Massive firestorms rolled across Eidolon Prime's deserts. Cities were reduced to dust. The Terran shield grid flickered with dying light as it struggled to hold against the endless energy beams. Inside the command bunker, sparks rained from the ceiling. The lights dimmed. Officers grabbed onto tables to steady themselves. Generator 2 is offline, shouted an engineer. We're running on backup power. Route energy to the beacon first, Sarah ordered quickly. Keep that signal alive no matter what. The young engineer hesitated. Ma'am, if we do that, the shields will fall faster. Do it, she said sharply. We can rebuild shields. We can't rebuild hope, the man obeyed. Within seconds, power was redirected to the emergency beacon, the same ancient tower that pulsed with a soft blue glow in the corner of the room. The faint signal continued to stretch across the stars, repeating its message of distress. Sarah placed her hand on the console. Come on, she whispered. Someone out there must be listening. In the depths of space, far beyond the front lines, the faint Terran signal reached an impossible destination. Hidden inside the swirling gases of a nebula, an enormous ship stirred from its slumber. The TDS Retribution, one of the last Terran Dreadnoughts, awoke after centuries of silence. Its hull was covered with ancient armor plates. Its engines, dark for generations, began to hum again. Inside the control chamber, an artificial voice echoed through the ship. Signal received. Source Eidolon Prime. Terran outpost under attack. Command chain inactive. Protocol 19 initiated. Lights flickered across the corridors. Robotic systems came to life. Giant cannons rotated and locked into position. Deep within the ship, a sleeping AI intelligence, Vanguard, reactivated. Mission: protect Terran life. Target: Kravian fleet orbiting Eidolon Prime. With a low rumble that rolled across the void, the Retribution began its journey. Back on Eidolon Prime, the battle had turned desperate. Sarah's forces were now scattered across the northern plains. Small groups of soldiers fought from the ruins of old mining structures. Their rifles overheated, their armor cracked, but still they resisted. Commander, Quan said over the comms, Sector 4 is gone. We can't reach them anymore. Sarah took a deep breath. Then we hold the center. As long as we stand, the Kravians can't claim victory. She looked around the bunker. Her people were exhausted. Some had fainted from lack of rest. Others leaned against the walls, too tired to speak. But not a single one had asked to surrender. The sound of distant explosions filled the air. Dust fell from the ceiling. A young private spoke up quietly. Commander, why do they hate us so much? Sarah turned to him. They don't hate us, she said. They fear what they can't control. Humans don't follow the same rules they do. We build homes in deserts. We survive in places others call unlivable. That's what scares them. The soldier nodded slowly. So, we fight because we're human? Sarah smiled faintly. Exactly. We fight because we still have something worth fighting for. Above the planet, Captain Ryle watched the Terran defenses slowly crumble. The shield generators were down to a weak flicker. His scanners showed only a few scattered outposts still transmitting. Victory seemed certain, and yet something kept bothering him. "Captain," said the technician from earlier, "that old Terran signal. It's getting stronger." Ryle turned sharply. "Stronger? From where?" "Unknown. It's coming from outside this system." "The signal is moving," he frowned. "Moving? As in approaching?" The technician nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. The signal speed suggests a large object entering hyperspace and something enormous. Possibly a ship." Ryle's scales rippled in unease. "A Terran ship? Impossible. Their fleets are gone. I can't identify it, Captain. The energy signature is old. Very old." Ryle stared at the sensor screen where a faint line glowed at the edge of the map. The trace pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like the heartbeat of a giant. "Monitor it," he said quietly, "and alert me the moment it exits hyperspace." Hours passed. On the surface, Sarah stood at the entrance of the bunker, looking toward the burning horizon. The night sky above was filled with streaks of fire and falling debris. She wondered how many of her people were still alive across the planet. Quan approached, holding a small communicator. "Ma'am, we've intercepted fragments of Cravian transmissions. They're picking up something on their sensors. An unknown object." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Unknown object?" "Yes, they sound worried." For the first time in days, she allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. "Keep listening. Maybe our message wasn't lost after all." In orbit, the Obsidian Claw's bridge was tense. The mysterious signal had grown stronger. Every few minutes, the sensors updated. The unknown ship was closing fast, approaching the system at impossible speed. "Captain," the navigator said, "the object will exit hyperspace in approximately 6 hours." Ryle paced across the bridge. "How large is it?" The technician hesitated. "Sir, the mass reading is enormous. Larger than any ship currently active in this region. Possibly larger than the Obsidian Claw itself." A quiet murmur passed through the bridge crew. Ryle clenched his jaw. "It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, we'll destroy it when it arrives." But even as he said it, a strange feeling crept through him, something close to fear. Back on the planet, Sarah and her soldiers huddled in the command bunker, listening to the distant thunder of the bombardment. The signal from the beacon continued to pulse steadily. One of the younger officers whispered, "Do you think it's them? Do you think someone heard us?" Sarah looked at the flickering light of the beacon. "Maybe," she said softly. "And if it is, the Cravians are about to learn what happens when you corner humanity." Outside, the wind carried the scent of ash and burning metal. The enemy believed victory was already theirs. But far beyond the stars, the silence of space was breaking. Something ancient and powerful was coming. Something built by human hands, born for war, and fueled by vengeance and duty. The Terrans on Eidolon Prime didn't know it yet. But their story was about to change. The retribution was on its way. The void around Eidolon Prime was silent except for the hum of the Cravian fleet. Thousands of ships formed a wall of steel and fire, their weapon batteries aimed toward the dying planet below. The Cravian Empire had never known defeat in centuries of war. To them, this battle was already over. On the flagship Obsidian Claw, Captain Ryle Thenner stood before the massive window of the command bridge, staring down at the glowing planet. Below, the last Terran colony burned like a fading ember. He had ordered 3 full bombardments and still the humans clung to life. "Report," he said coldly. "Planetary shields are failing, Captain," said the first officer. "We estimate total collapse within 1 hour. Ground resistance remains, but they are fragmented." Ryle nodded slowly. "Then soon it ends." But as he spoke, one of the bridge technicians looked up from his console. "Captain, the unidentified signal, and it's here." Ryle turned sharply. "What do you mean, here?" The technician swallowed hard. "It has exited hyperspace at the edge of the system." The bridge fell silent. Everyone turned toward the main display. On the holographic map, a faint golden mark appeared. A single ship, alone, moving toward Eidolon Prime. Ryle frowned. "A Terran vessel? Impossible. They have no fleet left." "It's too large to be a cruiser, Captain," the officer replied. "Mass readings are enormous." Ryle's unease grew. "Show me visual data." The main screen flickered. For a long moment, there was only darkness. Then, from the blackness of space, a shape emerged. It was vast, scarred, and ancient, a hull of dark metal reflecting starlight. Rows of cannons lined its sides like the teeth of a predator. The Kravian crew stared in silence. The technician whispered, "Identification code. Terran Dreadnought designation, TDS Retribution." A murmur spread through the command deck. The word Dreadnought was enough to make even veteran officers stiffen in fear. Those ships were legends, enormous war machines from a forgotten age built when humans fought entire coalitions alone. "They can't have one still operational," Ryle said slowly. "Those ships were decommissioned a century ago." But the truth was right before his eyes. The Dreadnought moved through the void with calm power, its engines glowing blue, and it was heading straight for them down on the surface. Commander Sarah Holt stood outside her bunker, staring at the same night sky. She saw a distant flash, not like an explosion, but like the opening of a gate. Her communicator buzzed. "Commander," Quan's voice came through, breathless. "Our scanners picked up something massive entering orbit. We don't know what it is, but it's not Kravian." Sarah's heart pounded. "Are you saying—" Before she could finish, a deep rumble shook the ground. The sky above brightened as a massive silhouette passed across the clouds, far beyond the reach of the naked eye, yet clearly visible as a moving shadow among the stars. Her soldiers stepped out of the bunker, looking upward in silence. Hope, real, tangible hope, filled the air for the first time in weeks. In orbit, the Kravian armada formed battle lines. Dozens of cruisers moved into defensive formation around the obsidian claw. Energy weapons charged. "Captain," said the first officer. "Orders?" Ryle's mind raced. He had fought many enemies, but never a dreadnought. Their armor was legendary. Their power systems were unstable but unmatched. He straightened. "We attack first. Overwhelm it with numbers before it can engage. Signal all ships full assault." The order spread through the fleet. Within moments, hundreds of Kravian warships turned toward the lone Terran Dreadnought. The Retribution moved forward slowly, its engines burning bright. Inside, the ship's AI, Vanguard, monitored hundreds of tactical feeds. Multiple hostiles detected. Engaging defense protocols, automated systems came online. Plasma cannons extended from armored hatches. Missile silos opened. Shields flared to full strength. The ship's hull, covered in deep scars from forgotten wars, gleamed with renewed power. The Kravian fleet opened fire first. Beams of energy lanced across the void, striking the Retribution's shields. Explosions rippled across its armor, but the massive ship didn't slow. Inside, Vanguard calculated the odds. Enemy weapons insufficient. Counterattack authorized. The Dreadnought's broadside guns rotated into position, each barrel longer than a Kravian cruiser. When they fired, the darkness of space turned white. The first salvo tore through the Kravian front line. 2 ships vanished instantly. A third broke apart in a silent explosion. Shockwaves of plasma lit up the fleet. On the obsidian claw, the bridge filled with chaos. "Multiple ships destroyed," cried the tactical officer. "That single volley, it wiped out an entire wing." Ryle slammed his fist on the console. "Regroup. Focus fire. Bring it down." But no matter how much they fired, the Dreadnought advanced. Every blast that hit it was met with 3 in return. It moved like a beast awakened from a long sleep, its weapons roaring in steady rhythm. Down on the planet, the Terran soldiers stood in awe as fire streaked across the sky. "Look!" shouted one of them, pointing upward. "They're fighting in orbit." From the ground, it looked like a storm of light, blue and orange flashes dancing across the heavens. Every Kravian ship that fell burned like a falling star. Sarah watched quietly, eyes wide. "That's a Terran design," she whispered. "It has to be." Quan's voice came through the comms again. "Commander, sensors confirm it. The Terran Dreadnought Retribution has entered orbit. It's taking on the entire Kravian fleet." The bunker erupted with cheers. Even the wounded soldiers smiled. Hope, once buried under fear, flared to life again. Sarah closed her eyes for a brief moment of relief. "They heard us," she said softly. "Someone out there heard us." Back in orbit, the Kravian fleet struggled to hold formation. Their ships were falling faster than they could regroup. "Captain, our left flank is collapsing," shouted the officer. "We've lost 20 vessels already. Ryle's mind raced. All ships pull back to defensive range. Use the planetary gravity well as cover. But it was too late. The Retribution's forward cannons glowed with fierce blue light. Vanguard's calm voice echoed through its systems. Target Obsidian Claw, distance 3,400 kilometers. Probability of destruction, 98%. Inside the Retribution's command chamber, power surged through ancient circuits. Firing main battery. The void erupted with a blinding flash. The energy beam struck the Obsidian Claw head-on, tearing through its shields and slicing across its hull. Entire decks ruptured. Fire filled the alien ship. Reel was thrown to the floor as alarm screamed. "Damage report," he shouted. "Catastrophic, Captain," the officer replied. "Shields gone. Reactor unstable." Reel pulled himself upright, watching the Retribution silhouette through the shattered viewport. It glided through space with unstoppable grace, smoke and flame trailing behind the Kravian ships it destroyed. "This," he whispered, disbelief in his voice. "This is what destroyed the old empires." As the battle raged above, Sarah received a transmission through the old Terran frequency. Static filled the room, then a calm, synthetic voice spoke. "Commander Holt, this is TDS Retribution. Distress signal received. We are engaging hostile forces. Ground support available upon request." For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. Every officer in the bunker froze. Then she smiled. "Retribution? Welcome back." "Acknowledged," the AI replied. "You are not alone." Within minutes, orbital strikes from the Dreadnought began targeting Kravian positions on the ground. Precision beams destroyed landing ships and enemy artillery with perfect accuracy. For the first time, the humans began to push forward. On the Obsidian Claw, Ryle stared at the burning remains of his fleet. Only a fraction of his ships remained, scattered and terrified. He turned to his officers. "Retreat signal now, but Captain, now!" he roared. As the order went out, the Kravian ships began pulling away from orbit. Some engines failed mid-jump. Others exploded as the Dreadnought fired one last volley. The mighty Kravian armada, the fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds, was in full retreat. Ryle's eyes never left the Terran ship. Even as his vessel limped away, he couldn't stop watching that single symbol of human defiance. "How?" he whispered. "How do they always return?" Down below, the skies cleared. The bombardment stopped. The humans stepped out into the light, covered in dust and ash, but smiling. Sarah stood at the entrance of the bunker, looking up at the stars. The massive Dreadnought drifted slowly above, casting a shadow across the clouds. Her communicator buzzed. "Commander Holt," said Vanguard's calm voice. "Enemy fleet in retreat." "Planet secure?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Then we hold the line." She looked at her soldiers, proud and unbroken. Against all odds, humanity had survived again. And now the galaxy would remember. The shadow of the TDS Retribution stretched across the barren plains of Eidolon Prime, a massive reminder of what humans could accomplish even after centuries of hardship. Its engines glowed blue, casting streaks of light across the dust and ruins. The small Terran forces, battered but unbroken, gathered around the remaining bunkers, morale soaring like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Commander Sarah Holt stood atop a ridge, surveying the battlefield. She had fought countless skirmishes, but nothing compared to this moment. The arrival of the Dreadnought had shifted the balance in ways she could scarcely believe. Now humanity had a chance not just to survive, but to push back. Lieutenant Quan approached, carrying a tactical display. "Commander, the enemy is retreating, but sensors show clusters of Kravian forces regrouping in orbit. They may attempt a counterattack." Sarah nodded. "Then we need to be ready. Prepare artillery and defensive batteries. Let's make them regret underestimating us." Down below, the Terran soldiers moved quickly, reinforcing positions and repairing damaged weapon emplacements. Civilians turned soldiers carried supplies, patched walls, and loaded cannons. Every movement reflected a determination that was uniquely human, a refusal to surrender no matter the odds. Above the planet, the remaining Kravian fleet slowly gathered. Captain Ryle Thenner was on the bridge of his flagship, now crippled and patched together with emergency repairs. His pride had been shattered by the sudden appearance of the Terran Dreadnought. Hundreds of ships lost, strategic plans ruined. "They survived because of that ship," Ryle muttered. "Destroy it and the humans will fall." A first officer hesitated. "Captain, engaging the Dreadnought directly could cost us the rest of the fleet. Its firepower is beyond our calculations." Ryle's scales bristled. Then find another way. I will not leave this system in shame. Prepare for planetary bombardment. Force them to fight in the open. Make them bleed. Meanwhile, the Retribution moved with methodical precision. Its AI, Vanguard, had begun scanning the planet and coordinating with Sarah Holt. Commander Holt, the enemy fleet is regrouping. Recommend deploying surface-to-orbit artillery and ground units to maximize defensive coverage. Sarah nodded. Agreed. Begin scanning for Cravian supply lines and weak points. Let's hit them where it hurts. The Terrans worked in perfect synchrony with the Dreadnought. Orbital strikes neutralized enemy satellites while ground artillery targeted approaching Cravian ships. Humans were using every trick, every tactic they had, and it was working. For the first time in decades, the Cravian Empire was struggling to contain a human response. On the surface, soldiers cheered as an enemy squadron attempting to land was destroyed before it reached the plains. Every strike brought hope. Every victory, small or large, renewed morale. Sarah moved among the troops, issuing orders and encouragement. Hold the ridge. Keep the batteries firing. The Dreadnought is covering you. Even in the chaos, the human spirit shone. Young soldiers who had never held a weapon beyond a simulator now directed squads with precision, covering each other's weaknesses. Civilians operated damaged cannons, firing with courage born from desperation. In orbit, the TDS Retribution continued its assault with unmatched precision. Its massive cannons ripped through enemy formations. Every shot was calculated, every move measured. Cravian ships that had once been terror incarnate were torn apart in moments. Vanguard update strategy, Sarah said, speaking directly to the ship's AI through the secure communication channel. Acknowledged. Recommended approach, divide remaining Cravian forces. Use surface fire to channel them into kill zones. Sarah nodded. Do it. And keep me informed. The Dreadnought adjusted its trajectory, coordinating its fire with ground batteries. Soon, the combination of orbital bombardment and surface artillery created a deadly corridor. Cravian ships entering it faced concentrated fire from all directions, and many did not survive. Ryle watched from his bridge, frustration growing into fear. His fleet, once confident, was now scattered and weak. Captain, casualties are escalating, reported his tactical officer. They are. Coordinating with the surface? This is unprecedented. Ryle slammed his claws against the console. They're humans. That explains everything. On the planet, Sarah stood at the communications tower, looking at the sky ablaze with light. Everyone ready? She asked. Soldiers nodded. They had learned quickly. Humans were adaptive. But now they were unstoppable when led by purpose and courage. Then let's finish this, she said. Through careful coordination, the Terrans funneled the remaining Cravian forces into narrow valleys, using terrain to their advantage. Orbital strikes targeted the rear, cutting off reinforcements. Artillery pounded enemy formations as the Terrans advanced. The Cravians had once believed they could overwhelm humans with sheer numbers. But the combination of ingenuity, persistence, and courage proved more powerful than they imagined. Hours passed. The battle was relentless, but by nightfall the Cravians began retreating. Their ships limped away, many damaged, morale shattered. For the first time in centuries, the humans had forced an alien empire to flee. Sarah looked at the battlefield, exhausted but proud. Around her, her soldiers cheered. The Dreadnought hovered above, its blue glow a beacon of hope. Humanity had survived again, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. This is just the beginning, Sarah said softly. The stars were silent once more. But the galaxy had learned something that night. Humans were not to be underestimated, and any who tried would pay the price. The dawn over Eidolon Prime was quiet, almost peaceful. Smoke still rose from the scorched plains, but the fires were dying. Terran soldiers moved among the ruins, rescuing survivors, repairing defenses, and celebrating small victories. The TDS Retribution hovered above the planet, scanning the area for lingering threats. Its massive hull reflected the light of the rising sun. The ship had seen centuries of battles, but this campaign felt different. Humans were no longer scattered survivors. They were a force united by courage, intelligence, and determination. Commander Sarah Holt stood on a ridge, overlooking her people. Her uniform was torn, her hair streaked with dust, but her eyes were clear. She had led them through impossible odds, and they had survived. Quan, she said, turning to her second in command. Prepare a full status report. We need to know what's left of their fleet and what we can repair on the ground. Lieutenant Kwan nodded. Yes, Commander. Casualties are minimal considering the assault, and our defensive capabilities are intact. The Dreadnought has neutralized most of the remaining enemy satellites. Sarah smiled faintly. Then let's finish the job. Above the planet, the remaining Kravian ships regrouped. Captain Ryle Thenar was furious. His fleet had been shattered, his pride broken. But one thing remained: the stubbornness of the Kravian Empire. They cannot defeat us, Ryle said, voice low and controlled. We will strike again. We will find their weakness. The tactical officer shook his head. Captain, we cannot match the Dreadnought or these human forces. Our losses are too great. Ryle narrowed his eyes. Then we wait. We calculate. We return stronger. Humans may fight, but even they have limits. The humans, however, were already thinking ahead. Sarah convened a meeting with key officers and Vanguard, the Dreadnought's AI. Vanguard scanned the surrounding systems. Locate any Kravian reinforcements and supply lines, she said. Acknowledged, Commander, the AI replied. Estimated enemy movement detected. Multiple signals suggest retreat and regrouping at nearby asteroid belts. Sarah studied the map. Then we pursue them. We cannot let them recover. Humanity survives by action, not hesitation. Mobilize all available forces. We strike before they rebuild. On the ground, soldiers cheered at the words. They were ready. For the first time, they weren't just defending. They were going on the offensive. In orbit, the Retribution prepared to lead the attack. Its weapon systems hummed, ready for battle. Its massive cannons and orbital support made the Kravian fleet vulnerable, but only careful strategy could ensure victory without unnecessary losses. Vanguard, coordinate with ground units. Prepare simultaneous strike, Sarah instructed. Coordination complete, the AI replied. Probability of success 93%. Sarah smiled. Then let's remind the galaxy why humans fight. The Terrans moved fast. Ground units engaged retreating Kravian forces, cutting off supply lines. Orbital strikes from the Retribution destroyed remaining satellites and interceptors. The enemy, shocked by the audacity of the humans, faltered at every turn. Captain Ryle watched helplessly as his fleet disintegrated. Even the bravest officers could not deny it. The humans were not only surviving, they were taking the fight to the Kravian heart. Finally, the decisive confrontation came. The Obsidian Claw, the Kravian flagship, faced the TDS Retribution in orbit, fast weapons charged, shields blazing. Both ships knew the outcome of this duel would define the battle for decades. The Dreadnought fired first, precision targeting the flagship's engines. Explosions rippled across the hull, crippling its maneuverability. The Obsidian Claw retaliated with volleys of plasma, but the Retribution's shields held firm. Focus fire on the bridge, Sarah instructed. Targeting complete, Vanguard replied. A final beam struck the command center of the Kravian flagship. Smoke poured from the shattered hull. Ryle watched as his fleet, leaderless and broken, began to retreat in chaos. On the surface, the humans cheered as enemy ships fled. The long night of fear and desperation had ended. Humanity had survived. Against overwhelming odds, they had turned the tide of war. Sarah looked toward the stars. This is only the beginning, she said. They will return. But so will we. Always. Above, the TDS Retribution floated silently, a silent guardian watching over the planet. Its presence alone reminded the galaxy. Humanity could endure, adapt, and strike back when least expected. For the first time in centuries, the Terran colonies felt safe. And the legend of the Dreadnought, of human courage, ingenuity, and resilience, spread across the stars. Their victory was certain until a Terran Dreadnought joined the fight. And in the hearts of humans everywhere, the fight would never end.